Good evening. Welcome to Akshaya Patra's first virtual gala, the Boston Virtual Gala. We are joined by 1,000 families in this meeting as well as a few hundred more on Facebook Live. It is indeed heartwarming to have friends like you joining us year after year, rallying behind the good work we do and encouraging and motivating us. Thank you for being here tonight with us. In the year 2020, as events quickly went online, one thought came to our mind. However, are we going to raise funds when in previous years everything had been done through 25 events all across the US with the help of amazing chapters? Well, the answer came to me this morning with just one word, and that word is trust. The trust when millions of Varkaris or devotees walk hundreds of miles seeking for something that means something to them. When 1.8 million children come to school to make sure that they are able to study, and 1.8 million parents trust that we will make sure that there is a meal provided for them in school, that trust is what we wish to uphold tonight and every year as we move forward with a firm commitment to not just feed 1.8 million, but 5 million every single day. The story of my family is pretty similar to most of us here. 37 years ago, my husband and I, when we moved to the US, we moved here with 4 suitcases. Most of them had books in them. We had a cricket bat and a piece of paper that said, "You have a job in Los Angeles." And I say, when you talk to all the Indians here and you tell them this story, they will say, "Man, that's my story too." It's true. Most of us have come from very modest backgrounds. We came here with an education, we came here with a degree, and we either went for further studies or joined other family members in the US to live the American dream. We also make sure that we provide for our children things that we did not have. Yet, this is also the time that we should share what we do have. And those are stories of struggles, those are stories of challenges, the stories of successes, the stories of well-being, the successes of sharing what we have, and of course, giving back to the country we were born in, and that gave so much to us. So friends, sit back, relax, enjoy the keynote speeches, and of course, here's a video you're going to love.
Akshaya Patra, the unlimited bowl of abundance and sustenance, founded in 2000 in Bengaluru, India, began serving 1,500 meals to a small group of school children. The organization has grown to become the world's largest midday meal program to alleviate child classroom hunger. With the highest efficiency and a commitment to quality, 7,300 employees, including 30% women, work in 48 ISO standard Akshaya Patra kitchens, preparing between 10,000 to 250,000 meals in 6 hours.
गरीब परिवार वाले जो बच्चे हैं वो इस खाने से स्कूल में जाके खा लेते हैं तो एक टाइम का अपना पेट भर लेते हैं.
More than 800 custom-designed trucks transport the meals in hygienic conditions to arrive perfectly on time, 6 days a week.
कुछ ना कुछ आता रहता है, जैसे सोमवार को यानी मंडे को कुछ ना अलग, जैसे दाल, सब्जी, रोटी. कोई बार वो येलो कलर की रोटी वो बहुत अच्छी लगती है, उसमें अजवाइन.
Independent studies by Harvard Business School and Nielsen on Akshaya Patra's midday meal program show increased school attendance, especially among girls, a lower dropout rate, and strengthened social development.
क्योंकि खाने से हमें कई प्रकार के विटामिन, प्रोटीन वगैरह मिलते हैं और उससे हमें मानसिक का जो हमारा दिमाग होता है उसका विकास होता है, ऊर्जा मिलती है खाने से हमें.
If you educate a student, 10th grade or maybe even college, it pretty much pulls that whole family out of the circle of poverty.
मेरे को बड़े होकर पुलिस बनना है और क्योंकि मैं देश की रक्षा के लिए
Food and education go together. You could be sitting in a class in an Ivy League school, but if you haven't eaten in the last 24 hours, nothing makes sense. And this is you as an adult. So consider a growing child. It's necessary that they get a hot meal and that it be unlimited.
I think the most fun part was visiting the schools because I got to talk with a group of kids, all girls who are my age, and I realized that they were just like me. They had the same goals, same ambitions, and then I realized that we were the same. It's just that we were born with different opportunities.
Focusing on maintaining the highest levels of governance and transparency, Akshaya Patra has won the Gold Shield Award of Excellence in Accounting from the Indian Accountants Association over multiple years, becoming the sole NGO to earn a place in the Hall of Fame.
We loved many things about Akshaya Patra. It has outstanding corporate governance. It's really well run. It's got a really strong board. And so that gives a lot of confidence that your money is going to go where it matters the most.
I think it's a win-win situation. It is, of course, a win for the recipient because there is a need out there that needs to be fulfilled. But there's also a need within the giver or the donor to do something that will make you feel good about yourself. Both parties benefit. The donor benefits, or the worker benefits, or the volunteer benefits, and the receiver benefits. There are not many things in life that have that kind of a joy on both sides.
There is no better expenditure of money, and it's really important for these kids to stay in school and to learn. So I love this program.
Giving that comes from a place of abundance is spiritual. Children have infinite potential.
In this extraordinary effort to feed the hungry children in schools by contributing whatever you can.
Good evening, friends. My name is Rakesh Kamdar, and I'm the chapter chair for Akshaya Patra Boston. On behalf of 1.8 million children, millions of COVID-19 relief food package recipients, and Akshaya Patra Boston team, welcome. We are grateful to our sponsors for their passion, contribution, and commitment to Akshaya Patra. With your help, in 2019, Boston chapter raised over $1 million, and in 2020, through this virtual gala, we have raised so far $500,000. The Boston chapter is engaged with various activities such as the Youth Ambassador Program, the Women's Forum, and the CEO Forum. Thank you again, and now it is my great pleasure to introduce the Youth Ambassador team from Boston, and this team is mentored by our chapter committee member, Venkat Koluri.
Living in America, I never have to think twice about basic aspects of my life, such as food or education. If I'm hungry, I just go to the fridge. If I want to learn, I just go to school. I never have to put one over the other. I've always been aware of the poverty in India, but I never knew how critical it was until I came across Akshaya Patra. Their method of providing free meals in school is intelligent and creative, and is what sets it apart from other organizations. Realizing that I can make a difference in these kids' lives even though I'm 8,000 miles away is what encouraged me to join Akshaya Patra.
When I was 6, my family took me to an orphanage in India. I didn't know there were so many kids living in poverty. I knew I needed to do something about it. I told my parents that we needed to go back to the orphanage to donate a few things to them. We donated coloring books, markers, pencils, and all the basic things that I would want if I were a kid. The whole experience was unreal. It shocked me to see how many children in India didn't have enough resources to live.
My family and I visited a kitchen in Bombay. It was an incredible and eye-opening experience. We first got a tour of the kitchen and learned how the nutritious food was prepared in large quantities. But the best part for me was when my family and I went to the schools to actually serve the meals to the children and spend time with them. It was amazing to see how happy they were to be able to receive these meals and meet us.
I vividly remember walking into the facility and being amazed by the size of the kitchen. I noticed how all the food that was being produced was made by hand, and that all the people involved in the production of it were working hard as if they were cooking for their own families.
It was soon to be my 7th birthday, and like any 7-year-old, I was really excited. My mom had been volunteering for Akshaya Patra for a couple months before, and she suggested that on my birthday, instead of getting presents, we should have people donate the money they would have used to buy a present to Akshaya Patra. As a 7-year-old, I really didn't know what to make of this, but it taught me a valuable life lesson: to always help people in need and always try to give back.
By helping this foundation, not only would you be able to bring countless children joy in India, but you'd also be able to experience that feeling of joy yourself.
I am very thankful that I'm able to be part of a group that helps many impoverished kids get nutritious meals every day. Throughout the 6 months that we've been together, I have learned leadership skills, how to work with a short deadline, and a new way of looking at the world. I learned that we should appreciate what we have given and if possible help others who don't have that same life.
I first got my idea for a vending machine after coming back from a trip to India, visiting one of the schools Akshaya Patra supports. I convinced my dad to let me get a vending machine. Along with snacks and drinks, my vending machine also displays a banner showing people how their money is being spent to feed and educate kids all over India. I'm positively sure that there's many other kids all throughout America who can come up with their own ideas to support Akshaya Patra. So please, join the Akshaya Patra community to help make this profound difference. Thank you.
I've been associated with Akshaya Patra for many years now, and every year I come to United States, different cities, meet different people. This year, maybe different, maybe not. I don't know when I'll be able to come next, but whenever it is safe to come to United States, I will be there with you. And on that special occasion, I want to tell you that you and 20 of your special friends, there is a dinner waiting at a restaurant or at a place of your choice, where exotic dinner, fun, stories, an evening to remember will be created specially for you. That's for you.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome our next speaker. He has been teaching for a long time at Harvard Business School. He teaches marketing, business, and social enterprise. He's a long-time supporter, a friend, and a mentor to us at Akshaya Patra. Please welcome Professor Kash Rangan.
Let's only hope that this is the start of many good things to come after the somewhat unprecedented and brutal times humanity has faced in the last 3 months or so, starting from February, really from February. Globally, 250,000 people have died to COVID-19 in just 60 days. And in the US alone, roughly about 1,000 people have died starting early March. And we are at about 65,000 people who are expired because of COVID-19. Now just imagine, this is like 1,000 people every day, 3 jumbo jets crashing in the United States. Every morning you open the newspaper and find 3 jumbo jets have crashed. And globally, it is something like 12 jumbo jets have crashed. That's devastating. And while our hearts absolutely go out to the victims and the families of this pandemic, our admiration has to go to the people. The frontline workers, as have already been mentioned, who've taken the frontal assault and defended our health and well-being as they continue to do so, not just the workers, but other essential work. But what I want to draw attention to is the following. This is COVID-19. This is the visible pandemic which we all see, and we see the devastation it has already caused. I want to draw your attention in the next slide to the invisible pandemics, which we all actually face on a day-to-day basis, but it does not come at us with the same urgency as COVID-19. But if you look at what's happening globally, waterborne diseases, cholera, typhoid, diarrhea, takes 3.5 million lives a year. 3.5 million lives a year. A bulk of them are children. Infant mortality itself is 3 million a year. 3 million babies die. HIV/AIDS is about 1 million people. Malaria kills 400,000 people. More than half of them are children. And women in childbirth, 300,000. So we have to put COVID-19 in the context. COVID-19 is, of course, a big event. So if you take a look at the numbers above, in 60 days, if it has taken 250,000, it will very well be in the top 3 in terms of the mortality. What is distressing about these pandemics, be it COVID-19 or maybe the silent invisible pandemics, which I'm drawing your attention to, is, as you will see in the next slide, these pandemics have a ripple effect. The after effects, the aftershocks of these effects are devastating. If you don't have health, then you lose employment. And if you don't have employment, you don't have enough money to put food on the table. And then you couple that with the basic skills that you need to gain employment, some education or job skills you need to gain employment. These 4 basic needs could be devastating, and the ripple effects go right through society. There are 30 million Americans who filed for jobless claims, and as many speakers before you have already alluded to, in India, 80% of the employment is in the informal sector. That's 380 million people. There are 100 million migrant workers who have all been displaced because of COVID-19. And when you take a look at this distressing after effects, when you go to the next slide, what you will notice is that this is what happens. You might think, looking at this slide, that this is the parking lot of the Atlanta airport, which is one of the busiest airports in the US. But in fact, this is not the parking lot. It is Atlanta, though. It is a western suburb of Atlanta where all these people are waiting in line to get their meal. These are hungry people who have lost their jobs. This is the aftershock of COVID-19, what a pandemic causes. COVID-19 is the frontal assault. But now if you were to go back from what you see here to the next slide, what you find is this is the size of the underlying factor. This is the silent aftershock that we all face every day. And COVID-19 has brought all this to light. Lack of essential health. There are 3.5 billion people on planet Earth who just don't have primary health care, who can't go anywhere if they're just sick. It's just primary sickness. I'm talking about flu, I'm talking about cough, I'm talking about asthma, I'm talking about malaria. 2.5 billion people, lack of sanitation, access to safe water, just having clean, safe water to drink, 2 billion people. Chronic undernourishment, 800 million people. Chronic hunger is 150 million. And in the last 60 days, that number has gone up to 300 million. It was 150 million at the start of the year. COVID-19 has added another 150 million hungry people. There are 800 million illiterate people. 250 million children don't attend school. That is the scale of the problem that we are talking. And when you have such big scale size problems, the solution also has to be scale sized. While I've talked about the size of the pandemic we all face, both the visible and invisible, I don't want to be a prophet of doom on this lovely day and on this optimistic note on what we might expect as we go forward. Going to the next slide, what I want to share with you is my optimism. We are human beings. We have to be optimistic. We know that human beings, their ingenuity and resilience has always seen us out of crisis. And we already see that in COVID. Social distancing caused considerable behavior change. We seem to have flattened the curve. Innovative therapeutics have already surfaced. Vaccines are being developed at absolutely fantastic speed. So all these things are happening because of human ingenuity. The question to ask is, how about the silent, the invisible pandemics like the ones that I shared with you, where billions of people are all being subject to uncertainty, to being fearful of whether they'll have things to eat, whether they'll have a home, and of having the uncertainty of not knowing what the future will be. And here is where I want to give a shout out to Akshaya Patra. As somebody who has studied management and who teaches management for a living, when I share the Akshaya Patra story with my students, you saw the youth ambassadors talk about the Akshaya Patra kitchen. When I share the story of Akshaya Patra with my MBA students in an Ivy League college, they look at this and then they say, oh, this doesn't look like a kitchen. It looks like a factory floor. And I tell them, yeah, that's exactly right. It is a factory floor. What you see here is the Akshaya Patra kitchen. It is an assembly line. It is a vertical assembly line. It's a 3-storied building where the raw material gets assembled on the 3rd floor, and then through chutes, the processing develops on the 2nd floor, the 1st floor, and so on. And every bit of this process is fine-tuned. It's refined to 6 Sigma limits. The people who run this kitchen are 6 Sigma trained production engineers. The CEO is a 6 Sigma black belt. Why do you need this level of efficiency in the system? Because you have to make a meal and serve it to children at 15 cents a meal. We need to have scaled solution for scaled problems. That's the reason for this efficiency. But it's not just efficiency. As you see from the next slide, when the food comes down all the way through the vertical assembly line and gets ready, each of these vans that you already saw, they are not only GPS enabled, but every one of those containers that you see, there is a UPC label that is scanned and affixed to the container. And why is that done? Because then they can track the temperature at which the meal was delivered to the school, whether the meal was delivered on time, what is the ambient temperature, was the quantity enough. Everything is fine-tuned because it's not just the efficiency of 15 cents a meal, it's also the quality of the meal. As you can see from the next slide, what you see is millions of children, 1.8 million, you'll hear the number 1.8 million over and over again, but you see a quality, nourishing meal being served to these children so that you can have quality, you can have efficiency at the same time, because we have to bring scale solutions to scale problems. And I don't want to take too much time. If you go to I'll be open to questions and answers. I'll try my best. But what I want to share with you is, look, we are human beings. We have to be optimistic. We already see the signs of turnaround when it comes to COVID-19. You'll hear more about it from Professor Ashish Jha. But at least one thing is, let's not forget at this time of our crisis to also take a moment to reflect and think about the global deprivation that people face. And that's where a big shout out to Akshaya Patra, a big organization doing things at scale. We all should do our bit, but also let's give a big shout out to big organizations that are bringing this massive scale to solve global problems. Thank you all.
So this TAP Forum is the first one that's ever been organized. And the expectation is that we really want to increase the visibility of hunger as an issue, and also increase the visibility of Akshaya Patra and what it's doing to address the issue of hunger, especially in children.
It's very clear when they come in, there's no pressure for anybody to pledge or to write a check. They're coming here because they want to share their thoughts, they want to share their ideas, and some of those ideas we can absorb and we can translate that into action for the next 12 months.
I come from a big corporation. I'm the president of a company with 60,000 people in it. And earlier on, we had a whole series of VCs and startup CEOs in here. Both of us think at problems at completely different perspectives.
So writing a check is very, very easy. It's what's more difficult is being very intentional about how you want to use your time to make an impact to Akshaya Patra and the broader mission it is trying to serve.
Find a product market fit for the right person and the right set of individuals who won't just give money, but are willing to contribute time and become part of the mission.
Doing what we can to make sure that a child does not go hungry has a big impact on not just the child, but on the overall family as well as on society.
Friends, I have a story to share with you. I feel I must tell you my story, and I am very happy to share with you. It all started when I am in 5th standard. I came from very humble background. Me and my elder sister did our high school at Loyola School, where we used to get food from Akshaya Patra. Just like all other schoolmates, me and my sister await the arrival of Bluebus, the Akshaya Patra food truck. We used to go to school every day without miss, so that we could get a full meal, which is hot, nutritious and healthy. From puliyogre to anna sambar, rice with curd and pongal. And my favorite one is pongal. Moreover, we used to bring the food to home in tiffin boxes because this food was life. My journey of life received tremendous support, both moral and financial, from wonderful people like you through Akshaya Patra Foundation. This nutritious meal is one of the big reasons that I went back to school every day. I cleared my second PUC exam with 87% and become college topper there. And I also completed my Bachelor of Commerce with aggregate 92% and become college topper there as well. This all happened because of you people and your support, and I feel so blessed. Now, one of the big responsibility on my head is to do my work properly and build successful professional career and make Akshaya Patra Foundation and donors like you proud. Thank you what you have done for me. There are thousands of students like me who need your help and your support. I know every penny is matter because it's a hard-earned money. Every time you donate, it creates more successful stories like me, and it creates a smile on the face of poor student.
So friends, next is the much anticipated speaker we had all been waiting for. He's a global expert on COVID. He teaches public health at the Chan Harvard School of Public Health. He's a dear supporter and a long-time supporter of Akshaya Patra. He was actually there at our gala last year in Boston. Please welcome Professor Ashish Jha.
I'm going to spend about 10-15 minutes with you speaking about where we are on the COVID pandemic. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are globally. Then I'm going to talk about what's happening in India. And then I'm going to finish by talking about what brings us all together this evening. So we are in the middle of the greatest pandemic in a century. Not since the 1918 flu pandemic have we seen anything quite like this. As Kash said, 3.5 million people have been already identified with the disease. But most of us believe that the actual number of people who've been infected are 10 to 20 times that number. So 50 to 70 million people around the world. About 250,000 people have died. But again, I think that is a substantial underestimate. And most of us believe that the true number of deaths is in the 3 to 10 million range. So this has really been quite a big pandemic already. And we are early. And so some bad news that I have to share, and I'm sorry to do it, is if you think of this as a baseball game with 9 innings, I think we're in the beginning, we're in the top of the 3rd inning. The game has started, but it is early. We have a long way to go. So why do I say that? Well, the bottom line is that this pandemic will continue in the US, in Europe, in India, until we have a vaccine, or until we get to a point where so many people have been infected, 70, 80% of the population, that the virus essentially peters out. But my hope is we don't get to the 70 to 80% infection. My hope is we get to a vaccine. And even under the most optimistic of stories and scenarios, we are likely 12 to 18 months away. So if we think of that 18-month time frame, and we're about month 4, month 5, that's why I say we're sort of in the beginning of the 3rd inning in a 9-inning baseball game. And so what should we expect over the next 12, 18 months? It's going to be a difficult 12 to 18 months. Does not have to be locked down the way we have been right now, but we will see waves of this disease. And we have tools to counter it. Some amount of social distancing, I think, will become the norm and will be the norm for the next 12 to 18 months. We know that testing, tracing, and isolation, that's basically testing people for the infection and tracing their contacts and then isolating people who are infected is a really effective strategy at keeping the disease burden very low. And if we do that and we maintain some amount of social distancing, I believe we can get through this pandemic, all of us, over the next 12 to 18 months until a vaccine is available. So that's the global picture. So let's talk about what's happening in India. All of you know India has been going through a very challenging couple of months. India has been in a lockdown and has really had 3 phases. The first phase was a 21-day lockdown, which was then extended until May 3rd, until today. And then many of you know, if you've been following the news, that just a couple of days ago, India reported another extension, really creating 3 zones, red, yellow, and green, based on how much disease burden there is, saying some areas can go a bit back to normal, some areas have to remain cautious, and some areas have to remain in lockdown. So what do we know about the state of play of COVID-19 in India? So officially, there are about 42,000 cases of COVID-19 in India, though I again believe that the true number is 10 to 20 times that. By the way, I believe that 10 to 20 times for the US, for Western Europe, for China, there's no reason to think India is going to be different. And that means that in India, 500,000 to 1 million people have been infected. Officially, the number of deaths is 1,400. Again, I suspect that there are many more Indians than that have died of this disease. What's really interesting about India is there have been 2 main strategies that have been adopted by most countries with COVID-19, and India has taken a 3rd strategy altogether. So there was the East Asia strategy, the South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, which had testing, tracing, and isolation very aggressive early in the disease, and those societies were able to stay relatively open. The approach of Western Europe and the United States was one of denial in the beginning, acting like it wasn't going to happen, it wasn't going to be a problem, and then when the cases got overwhelming, having to shut down. India, interestingly, took a very proactive approach early. Even when the case numbers were small, India has gone into lockdown. And what that means is that the case numbers in India, while they are rising reasonably slowly. And that gives India time to ramp up and think about what its next steps are going to be. And this is the big challenge, because the moment the lockdowns are fully lifted across the country, we are going to see an increase in the number of cases. We are going to see a resurgence. That is the basic biology of this virus. It may be that we get lucky and in the hot months, it's not so bad, but come the fall, in the US, in India, across the world, we're going to see a major resurgence of this virus. So what can India do to get ready for that? And there is really one thing and one thing only, which is it needs to substantially build up its testing platform and get ready to test large scale, millions of people, identify those who've been infected and isolate them. That is going to be a central part, I believe, of a strategy in India to keep the virus from running wild once lockdown has been lifted. So I want to now shift to what has happened over the last 2 months and what the cost of that lockdown has been. And those of us in the public health world who have called for the lockdown and have praised the Indian government's lockdown, I think would be remiss if we did not understand the cost of that lockdown on people, especially the poor. The bottom line is the cost of the lockdown has been massive. And there are some people who have argued that 2 decades of economic gains in India are now at risk. And as Kash suggested in some of his data that he presented, we know that there are 400 million Indians who work in the informal economy. And many of them are at risk of falling further into poverty. Some estimates suggest that 150 million Indians are going to fall into poverty as a result of this lockdown. That is a massive cost. And let's talk about some of those costs, and then let's talk about what brings us here tonight. So obviously the cost of poverty and of impoverishment, especially among the poor, are felt very, very short-term ways, right? We see it in starvation, in illness, in suffering. But I actually believe that the short-term effects are dwarfed by the long-term implications of what we have just gone through. Because what you see and what we know from decades of research and of literature is that when you put nutrition at risk, particularly for kids, there are massive negative effects that are both short and long-term. We see big effects on education. Kids are less likely to go to school. So even when the lockdown ends, starving kids are less likely to go to school. Impoverished parents are less likely to send their kids to school. And less schooling means less education, less learning. These effects tend to be particularly pronounced for girls. And given what we know about the value of educating girls on the long-term well-being of a society, those effects are particularly awful. And that is what we have to fight against. Which brings us to Akshaya Patra, but really it brings us to us. The question isn't, in my mind, when is this all going to be over? Because I don't know. I don't know when we are going to have a vaccine. I've said 12 to 18 months, could be 10 months, could be 2 years. I don't know. The question is not when is this going to be over? The question is, how do we get through this? And how do we get through this unified? And how do we get through this in a way that lets us prosper and grow once this pandemic is behind us? For all of us, the next 12 to 18 months are going to be hard. But it is going to be particularly hard for the children and families that Akshaya Patra serves. The next year, I believe, is going to be transformative. And there are 2 futures ahead of us. And I want us to think about those 2 futures. And I want us to decide which future we want. The first future is we see these kids falling behind. We see them nutritionally compromised. We see them not being able to go to school, or if they go to school, not being able to learn. We see a decade of gains in gender equity, in economic parity, all of that washed away with one pandemic. That's one future, and we can decide that's the future we're going to live with. But it is not a fated future. It is not fate that that's what has to be. And so I want to talk about a second future, a very different future of what the next 12 to 18 months could look like. We can help these kids and families. We can feed them. We can make sure that we continue to support tying 2 critical needs, nutrition and education. We can maintain their ability to learn. We can make sure that COVID does not rob them of their future. That is our choice. So I want you all this evening to think about, what is the most you can do to support these kids? What is the absolute most you can do to support these families? And then I want you to do a little bit more than that. Because while this is going to be a hard year for all of us, we can do so much to help these children and their families get through what I think will be an extraordinarily difficult time. And I can't think of any organization better suited to have that impact than Akshaya Patra.
Thank you, Shaman and Bhumika. Always a pleasure to have you join us for our events. So friends, this brings us to the favorite part of the program, talking about Akshaya Patra and what it is for all of us. But before that, let me take you to a place where there's a class and there's a child. And the child is trying to study, but today is not the day for it. He's hungry and getting impatient. He can't focus. And so are the other students around him, because it's noon, it's lunchtime. Everybody's waiting for the bell to ring and for lunch to start. Well, think again. This is every one of us. Every one of us has felt hunger before lunch, and we know that there is a lunch. But for millions of children across India, 200 million children, this is not a given. It's not a fact. Akshaya Patra has started 20 years ago, knowing this, and is the largest NGO feeding program on the planet, according to Time magazine. We started with serving 1,500 meals to children in Bangalore and slowly scaled up to today feeding 1.8 million children with a hot, nutritious meal in 19,500 schools across 13 states in India. We are a manufacturing NGO. We operate 55 kitchens that are centralized and can cook anywhere between 10,000 to 200,000 meals within 6 hours. The food is transported in custom vehicles to schools, making sure that it is hot and it's nutritious and it's tasty. We employ 7,300 employees. 30% of them are women. Akshaya Patra, the words that mean the sustainable bowl of giving, never runs out of food. Our mission to provide unlimited food for education means exactly that. To make sure that the child can keep coming back for more food until he is full. Oftentimes, we see their siblings showing up in school, or the child is taking a box home to make sure that dinner is available. Just keep in mind, these are not street kids. These are children with parents who have 2 incomes. It's just not enough to ensure that the child gets a full meal. Oftentimes, it's the only meal the child gets, and this serves as the critical intervention for the child to attend school and stay in school, thus ensuring not only a proper meal, but also education. So let's go back to the number that everybody likes to quote on, $20. $20 feeds a child for an entire school year. That's 232 school days, where a meal costs 20 cents. 11 cents is provided by the government as a part of the midday meal program, and Akshaya Patra raises 9 cents. 90% of what you give goes directly towards feeding a child, and we retain only 10% for overheads. For a massive operation that purchases millions of tons of grains, spices, vegetables, this is a phenomenal number to be able to feed a child for $20. So friends, let's go back to the basics again. Hunger in the right time, in the right space is good. But hunger for a child in a classroom with no hope of a proper lunch or a midday meal is disastrous. It not only affects their cognitive abilities, it affects their learning. It affects their focus in class. It also affects them physically. Harvard and Nielsen conducted studies to measure what happens when the child gets a meal. It is the only stabilizing factor in a child's life, according to a study we did last year for the Ford Foundation. Not only has the increased attendance, but enrollment in Akshaya Patra schools has gone up. Children are loving that khane wali gadi that shows up at their lunchtime, and they're eager. They're talking about the food. They're excited about what's going to be on the menu today. 20 long years of dedicated service and love have not gone unnoticed. Akshaya Patra is the proud winner of 7 Gold Shield Awards in excellence in accounting and transparency. We have now been included in the Hall of Fame for the Chartered Accountants Association in India, and this recognition is only available to one NGO, Akshaya Patra. The for-profit in the Hall of Fame belongs to Infosys. Akshaya Patra won the Global Food Champion Award from the BBC in 2019. 36 awards over the last 3 years have recognized that Akshaya Patra is the gold standard in excellence in providing midday meals to children across India. Using our expertise for the last 20 years in providing mass number of meals, Akshaya Patra again has stepped up to feed migrant workers, daily wagers, and their families to ensure that meals are served. Since the lockdown on March 25th, we have served 25 million meals to migrant workers, daily wagers, and their families. We have provided ration boxes where families can cook meals at home and stay in self-isolation. So here is a video of how our kitchens operate. Akshaya Patra operates 55 kitchens in 13 states and 2 union territories in India. We have a system where the centralized kitchens can cook anywhere between 10,000 to 200,000 meals within 6 hours. Food is sourced locally, vegetables are triple washed to ensure hygiene. The runoff from the washed vegetables is used for washing our vehicles. This is a simple roti making machine. What started as a papad making machine now has evolved with frugal innovation into a beautiful roti making machine that can cook 60,000 chapatis within 1 hour. These rice cauldrons can cook enough rice to support 500 children's meals within 15 minutes. Our distribution vehicles transport the food up to a distance of 20 kilometers, ensuring that the food is hot at 65 degrees as it reaches the child's plate.
नमस्कार, मैं परेश रावल। अक्षय पात्र बॉस्टन चैप्टर वर्चुअल गाला में मैं आप सभी का अभिवादन करता हूं। बॉस्टन का नाम सुनते ही मेरे मन में टनाटन होने लगता है। बॉस्टन टनाटन, क्योंकि यहाँ पे मेरा दोस्त चंदू शाह, ईशानी शाह रहते हैं। मैं यहाँ पर मिस्टर देश पांडे को मिल चुका हूँ और मैं आप में से भी कई लोगों को मिल चुका हूँ जब मैं मेरा ड्रामा का शो लेकर आया हूँ। और मेरी नज़रों में बॉस्टन का ऑडियंस वेरी शार्प एंड इंटेलिजेंट ऑडियंस। तो ऐसे बॉस्टन से अक्षय पात्र वर्चुअल गाला को सपोर्ट करते हुए मुझे बेहद खुशी हो रही है। मुझे मेरा एक डायलॉग याद आ रहा है कि इन बच्चों को भगवान के भरोसे छोड़ने पे मजबूर मत करना, क्या पता भगवान आपके भरोसे बैठा। तो अक्षय पात्र जो काम कर रहा है उसके लिए मैं उनको वंदन करता हूँ, मुबारकबाद देता हूँ, धन्यवाद देता हूँ। यू आर डूइंग अ टेरिफिक जॉब। Thank you. I would like to call my wife, who is a former Miss India, film and a TV star, Swaroop, who is right now busy in education, in teaching teachers and in life skill program for children. Swaroop.
Hello. I would like to say something about Akshaya Patra. I am a huge fan of the work they do. I work in the villages in India and I see the direct result of their work. They make the most healthy, nutritive and very clean meals for our children. Thank you, Akshaya Patra. Because education on an empty stomach, I don't think that works. So thank you, Akshaya Patra, for everything you do for the children of India.
The Rena family donated $5,000. We have raised about $140,000 so far. And a lot of people are using that donate button that's up there. So keep going. This is much needed. And it's very important to make sure that beyond COVID, after this is done, schools will start in July, hopefully. And the midday meal program will keep going back and making sure that our children are served. So as we come to the close of an exciting virtual gala, I would like to thank every one of you for being here, for giving your responses on chat, for your very generous contributions, and above all, motivating and inspiring us to do more. This is 100% team effort. I have to thank all the chapter chairs, the chapter teams, the volunteers, our donors, and above all, 9 of my colleagues at AkshayaPatraUSA that have worked endlessly for endless hours, day and night, to make this event happen. Thank you, and I look forward to having you all with us on all of your virtual events all through 2020. Thank you.